Okay, so we were thinking about CMO Zen, as Jordan mentioned, is a boutique outsourced CMO firm. We help companies, they're usually pre-Series B in their growth to 50 million is kind of a target where people kind of graduate out of where we're the expertise to help them. But stages where we're focused. And we were thinking about, hey, Utah Tech Week seems awesome. What should we focus on? And we could have done like a deep dive in demand gen or content marketing, product-led growth companies, whatever other marketing thing you would have expected. And we thought, for today's times, we felt like pricing, that there probably wasn't going to be somebody else doing a session on pricing, so that's just marketing ourselves. But also, the pricing is really relevant for for the economy today, right? Capital efficient growth is the name of the game, and pricing is an inexpensive and thoughtful way to attack that doesn't cost a lot of money. It just takes time to get smart about it. And so we thought that we would do our best at trying to offer some resources to help you see what people are doing in pricing and help you latch on to some of the tools and principles that help you set pricing in a way that's the most effective. I'm going to switch hands here for a sec. Okay, so in putting this together, we've kind of distilled our thoughts into an ebook on 10 principles for pricing. This is available for free to everybody who's here. Just shoot me an email afterwards. I'll send you all the resources, the slides, any of the resources we mentioned, templates for doing the calculations and analysis. All of that will be available to you for being here. So how do prices normally get set? I'm sure you're thinking, well, it's like, how do we set ours? Well, we kind of just guess, or this is a really popular method. Right. Also, guessing is strong.
A little bit closer. It's hard to hear the back.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect.
This better?
Yep.
Okay. Negotiation, usually between senior team members. No, the price should be this. No, it should be this. Fear, that's always a motivating one, even though maybe not the most effective. Trial and error. Trial and error is actually a good way to learn things, but if there's a way to do it maybe with less error, that would be better. So part of this is we got to unlearn some of the things that we have learned. A couple of quick stats for companies that may be in your stage. 40% of seed stage companies have never tested pricing or conducted willingness to pay research. You'll see WTP a lot, that's willingness to pay. 55% of seed stage companies handle pricing ad hoc. So it's not really a dedicated process or department. There's no resource that's dedicated to be responsible for pricing. 82% of seed stage pricing falls to the CEO. Notice too that by the time you hit growth stage, this is a mark of maturity. And half of seed stage companies only consider pricing right before the launch of a company or a new product. And this is actually good news for you, because this is what the playing field looks like. And so it's really easy to be competitive against the norm when it comes to pricing. Okay, we're going to talk about ugly cats. Right, this is the first emotional tug that you've had, right? So one of the reasons it's hard to get smart about pricing is because there's a whole bunch of stories out there that make pricing feel confusing. This is a pretty well-known story from Harry Beckwith, where he talked about a lady in Denver, litter of kittens, trying to give these cats away. Nobody is taking free cats. Finally, up to her eyeballs, she posts an ad in the newspaper. It was a little while ago, right? Posts an ad in the newspaper, ugly cats, $200, gone in a weekend. We're like, that's counterintuitive. Why did that work? Another story is from a jeweler in New Mexico. They're selling turquoise jewelry. They're like, look, we got this stuff that's in this box that's not moving. And so the owner goes out of town. She tells her assistant, hey, everything that's in this box, half price. Just get it out of here. The assistant makes a mistake and misreads the note and instead doubles the price of everything, and everything sells out. So these counterintuitive examples make it hard to, it's like, well, pricing is just a mystery. It's just a black box. And so hopefully by the time we get to the end, you'll feel less that way about pricing. The other thing about pricing is the impact is outsized. So if you think about areas that you could make incremental improvements in your company, a 5% improvement in price is yielding a 22% gain, where the same improvement in revenue, cost of goods sold, SG&A, or R&D costs don't produce the same effect. So pricing has kind of a bullwhip effect in terms of your revenue. And who could use more revenue, right? Okay, in preparation for this goes along with our ebook. This is a canvas that kind of hits on 10 key areas to consider as you're looking at making pricing adjustments or setting your pricing policy. There's more stuff on here than we can cover today, but this is going to serve as our agenda. So we're going to hit on these 3 items, but I just want you to know there's more in there. If you're going to get all these resources, but there's more there, and if you need help with them, reach out. We'll talk you through it. Okay. So this was not this recession, but in a former recession, Warren Buffett famously said that pricing, the single most important decision in evaluating a business for investment is pricing power. And he went on to explain what that meant. He's like, what this means is if we look at a company, this was famous because he's like, yeah, we don't really look at the management team because if this is in place, that tells us the management team is doing something right. And everybody's like, oh, Warren Buffett doesn't care about management teams. But what he's saying is pricing power means if you raise your prices, your customers don't leave. That's pricing power. And the converse, according to Warren Buffett, is if you have to have a prayer session before you have a 10% increase in price, then we think that's a company that's in trouble. So, and I want to tell you that like Warren Buffett is correct about the principle of this, but he's also absolutely wrong. And you're like, hey, wait a minute, you're talking about the Oracle of Omaha up there, Chad. Like he's famous, you're not. Like why should we listen to you? So I'm going to appeal to your reason about this, but Warren Buffett's wrong about this because all you have to do is iterate on that idea. It's like, okay, so I have pricing power. I could raise my prices and customers won't leave. Then what? I spent all my pricing power. If I raise my prices to the limit of customers' willingness to pay, and then I no longer have the ability to raise them. I've now fallen off of Warren Buffett's target group. So on its face, there's a core principle there, but what he's saying is not deep enough for us really to get at what's driving for pricing. So here's another one. This was just this month. Right? Some of you guys, especially if you're marketers, will know Neil Patel. Owns Uber Suggest and a bunch of other things. Just this month on his podcast, he said, hey, times are kind of uncertain. Don't increase your prices unless you have to. Right? It's wrong. It's wrong. He's saying, he's giving you a rule of thumb that's based on not knowing. Right? Not knowing any better. So he's like, well, probably the economy is a little bit soft. That probably means that willingness to pay is going to shrink. If willingness to pay is shrinking and you were priced optimally before, then probably you shouldn't increase your prices. But both of these like rock stars, who I love, these quotes aren't giving you the level of granular detail you need to make smart pricing decisions. So why? The real question in all of it is about what's the customer willing to pay. This is really the key thing to understand about pricing is if the customer is willing to pay $10 and you're charging $5, the customer is not going to be they're not going to be unhappy giving you the rest of those other $5, right? It's all about, are you leaving money on the table? And so pricing strategies are really all focused about that. How well mapped are we to the customer's willingness to pay? The hard thing about willingness to pay is that it lives inside the mind of the customer, and that's kind of a hard place to go and find things. But I'm going to show you a few ways to approach that. Okay, are you with me? You're not ready to leave because I said Warren Buffett was wrong? Okay. Okay. Well, you may yet. We'll see how it goes. So we're going to take a look at number 4 was pricing method. There's cost-based and value-based pricing methods. Breaking this into twos makes it pretty easy to follow. And so let me share this quote with you. So this is Kyle Poyer with OpenView. If any of you know OpenView Ventures in Boston, they're like content machines over there, right? And Kyle's their pricing guy. Pricing and product-led growth is his purview. And he's over there, why haven't you switched to value-based pricing? Because value-based pricing, they're also focused on SaaS companies, so if you're in a different industry, that may not apply as much to you. But he's like, value-based pricing is where it's at. And he's got this broken down, right? So 40% of companies are on value-based pricing. That means 60% are doing something else. Well, let's take a look at what the options are here. I'm going to keep pointing as if this clicker works, but it doesn't work on the screen. So cost plus. It's a small group. Some industries and some products, cost plus is appropriate for. If you're a software company, cost plus usually takes the form of your CAC plus your COGS plus your margin. That's how you do cost plus pricing. But it's only 10%. Competitor-based, right? It's kind of a little pejorative about competitor-based pricing, but really, if we back up, competitor-based pricing, if that's all you're doing, right? You have no idea about what your product is actually worth, then maybe competitor-based price is wrong, but really that's at the heart of market-based pricing, which is over on the cost-based side. And market-based pricing is exactly how Kyle is going to value your company when he invests in it. He's not going to do it on value-based pricing. So there's a place for that. But what he's saying too is that as these companies price their products, that value-based pricing has legs. So thinking about willingness to pay. Think about this pair of shoes, right? So out of the 100 people that registered for this event, I think we had 15 women. Thank you for being here, women. And I was guessing that of the women who came, that probably not 100% would be super excited about bright red pumps, although some of you probably are. So this is here to help you think, we got to step into somebody else's shoes. Willingness to pay is about walking in somebody else's shoes, not trying to get somebody to walk in ours. And that's really the key with pricing. If you're a young company and the CEO is setting pricing, a lot of times they're doing it from their gut. They're saying, hey, this is what I think, and other people will think differently. So this is, forgive me for a Dilbert cartoon, but this cartoon was given to me by an old boss, and then I frequently brought it back out to him as I had data-driven decisions to make. So he said, the second option feels right, let's go with that. Well, should we always ignore the data, or is this more of a one-time thing? It's called intuition. Slippery slope to witchcraft. So speaking of witchcraft, who's ready for a little pricing voodoo? Okay, I'm going to show you something here that I think you'll like. So on our way to understanding willingness to pay, I'm going to give you some whys that are attached to structure. Pizza and salad. Thank you to everybody who took our survey. So we're going to actually show you some stats from the survey about pizza and salad. But let's say you own a pizza and salad restaurant. And you've already done your willingness to pay research. So you know that there are 4 groups of customers who have different levels of willingness to pay for pizza or for salad. Okay, I'm going to break 2 cardinal rules of presenting. So bear with me. One of them is I'm going to show you a spreadsheet like this. So that's a big no-no. And the other one is I'm going to show you some math. But it's a pricing session, right? You guys expected there would be a little bit of math. Anyway, so forgive me for that. So here we've got segments labeled A, B, C, and D. For ease of the math, each segment is the same size, 100 people. Okay, 100 people in each. Some people are willing to pay a lot for pizza, some not so much. Some willing to pay a lot for salad, not so much. Okay? And what we're going to try to do is figure out what individual prices we should set our pizza and salad at in order to capture this willingness to pay. So when we can assume that anybody who's willing to pay less will buy, or anybody who's willing to pay more will buy if the price is less. Is that fair enough? So why don't we start at the bottom? If I set my price for pizza at $2.50, I'm going to get everybody. Everybody's going to buy. If I set my price for salad at $1.50, everybody's going to buy salad. So I'm going to get if this was monthly, I got $1,600 a month of revenue that I'm going to get by setting my prices at the lowest price point. Now, how many are saying it's like, well, I don't know, the lowest price point seems like the best. Well, let's take a look. Did the lapel start? Come on, is that where I'm getting the? Okay.
Double.
Oh, okay. You're hearing it. Can you hear me through the lapel?
I think the lapel has to be turned off. That's the problem because it's pushing.
Okay, thanks, Marty.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, any better now? Well, okay, we'll try. Can you hear this? Okay.
Sounds a little better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to bump this up, right? Now we're not using the bottom pricing. We're using the second to the bottom. That means three tiers. It's my arm is doing that. Huh? Okay, I'm going to wave a little like this and say, pizza at $4.50, salad at $5 gets us to $28.50. That's we were at $1,600 before, right? So that's a $1,250 increase. And notice this: we changed no customers. We didn't go attack a different market. It's the exact same market, exact same customers, exact same product. We didn't introduce a new product or new features. The only thing we're changing is the structure of our pricing. And we've got, what, about a 40% increase in revenue? What if we take it up a little further? So here at $8 and $8.50, I give this exercise to my students. Some of you who've taken my class will remember this probably with a little PTSD. I give this exercise to my students, and they usually will come to they start going up this same tree. Okay, so at $8 and $8.50, now I'm up to $3,300 a month. That's a lot more than $1,600, and all I'm doing is changing my structure. Well, what if I keep going? Oh, now the trade-off between the number of customers and the price I'm getting per customer has tipped. So going all the way up to $9 doesn't give me the most. This is, in this scenario, right, $3,300 is the most that I can get based on individual pricing. Now, are we still leaving money on the table, though? Is there other things we could think about? One of the things we could think about is, what if we bundled them? What if we only sold pizza salad combos? In order to do that, right, we see that we're going to add a bundle column. We're going to just add up the willingness to pay for both. So now you'll notice that the willingness to pay gap is, there's less variance between the top and the bottom in the willingness to pay. So if we were to take this group and kind of start like we did before and just charge $10.50 to everybody, what does that do? That gets us up to $4,200. We've gone from $1,600 up to $4,200, and the only thing we're changing is the structure of the pricing. Right? 27% higher than the top individual pricing that we had. Is there more that we could do? We tried individual, we tried bundled. What if we tried mixed bundling? So we're going to sell individual or bundled prices. So we'll take the top tier for our individual pricing. If you just want pizza, it's $9. If you just want salad, it's $9. But then we'll sell bundles for the middle. So you can either buy pizza or salad individually or buy both for $13. Hey, that gets us up to $4,400, right? So we've spanned the difference. So all these slides I mentioned will be available. You can take a look at them. This slide encapsulates everything. Here's individual pricing, bundled pricing, and mixed bundling. And that got us 33% more revenue than our individual pricing, or 175% more revenue than our starting point, where we just priced at the lowest that we knew people would buy. This is what this looks like if we take a look at your survey results for what you were willing to pay for lunch. So A, thank you for filling out the survey, those of you who did. And just to show you that this isn't just an example where we just kind of cook it up and the numbers all magically work out. Right? It's like a Harvard Business Review case. They just give you all the answers. And so in this case, right, not quite, what was it, 37%, but 27% more revenue if we go with mixed bundling. And that's just with the data we collected from this group about what you're willing to pay for lunch. Right? So that's, thank you. This is the root underneath this quote. So Madhavan Ramanujam is a really well-known pricing guy. I was going to say guru, but then it seems like because he had an Indian name that was an Indian reference. He's with Simon Kucher, and he's a pro at this stuff. And this is what he means when he says, how you charge is often more important than what you charge. Okay, so now you're all like jazzed up about bundling. Oh God, how do we bundle our products? We're going to go bundle everything. Let me give you a few caveats, a few notes, especially for SaaS-based pricing. The first thing is, so let's say that I'm selling diamond bracelets. This is not a SaaS example. I'm selling diamond bracelets. What would bundle nice with diamond bracelets? Maybe diamond earrings, diamond necklaces. What would not be a good thing to bundle with diamond bracelets? Sandwiches. Sandwich is probably not a good thing to bundle with diamond bracelets. And the reason is because if you have things that are really disparate in price, people will tend to average the price. So they'll drag down the value of the expensive item because of the inexpensive item. Okay, this is a framework that I think you guys will like. This is especially appropriate for software bundles. This is called the leader, filler, and killer framework. In this case, right, we're using it like a McDonald's example. I got a burger, I got fries, I got coffee. What should I bundle? What should I not? The burger is a leader feature. This is something that somebody's willing to open their wallet and pay for. Fries are a filler feature because most people aren't going to go and just buy fries for their meal. But it does have value to them. They will pay more if there's fries bundled in with the burger. And coffee is a killer feature. And the reason is because not everybody wants coffee for lunch. Right? Like if you look at McDonald's menu now, you'll see coffee is bundled with breakfast. because they're matching up where more people are interested. Otherwise, if you include coffee in the bundle and they don't want it, then it becomes a killer feature. They will actually not buy anything because it's bundled with a killer feature. So it's really common for software to be sold as good, better, best. And good, better, best is, there's a psychological effect called the decoy effect, where introducing a level, a better or best level, actually increases sales of the things on either side of it. And you see this kind of pricing everywhere, right? So usually in software bundles, what happens is if I go with better, I still get everything in good. Everything in good comes with it. And then if I go for it with best, everything in better and good comes with that. So what that allows you to do is identify that the same feature might be a filler or a leader or a killer depending on which bundle. So the feature, like feature number 3 here, that's a leader feature in the good package, becomes filler for better and best. It's not the thing that's causing them to stretch out and pay more, but they value it. It's in there. Better, now the leader feature is actually a killer feature if it was in good, because they're not willing to pay what it takes to get that feature. So breaking down your product and understanding which category each feature falls into can really help you as you tune up your pricing. Like, what if you create a bundle and there's no leaders? Then you're going to find that's going to be a struggle to sell. What if you accidentally have a killer in there, right? Or the killer is too low in the pricing stack? Then that's something that you can identify and rectify. And again, you're not really changing what it is you're selling. You're not really changing the market. You're just changing the structure. And that's getting you more sales. Okay, a couple of notes on tariff structures. In terms of linear pricing is the easiest, right? I got 1 apple, it's $1. 2 apples, $2. 3 apples, $3, right? See the pattern here? It's like not too tough to follow, right? Linear pricing is cake. And we see this all the time. There's a lot of products that are priced linearly, and that works. A good example might be fuel. Okay, if I go buy a gallon of gasoline, I pay the same price per gallon. Like, the price of gas changes, but the price per gallon stays consistent. It's not like I get a special gallon, halfway through my fill up, that one's worth twice as much. They're all the same. It's priced linear. Another approach to this is called tariff pricing. It's called a tariff because there's some component of the pricing that functions kind of like a tax on the overall transaction. And so in this case, let's say I'm the same grocer selling apples. If I sell now I'm going to require everybody to buy a basket. And then they can buy as many apples as they want beyond that. If you think about this would be, well, here's a couple of examples. So Amazon Prime shipping and Costco are 2-part tariff pricing examples. If I go with Amazon Prime, right, I pay my, whatever it is, $120. And what do I get for my $120 in terms of shipping? Nothing. Nothing ships to me when I buy, so you get videos. Well, just look at the shipping component. The shipping component, I don't get anything. I'm a member, right? And they don't even send me like a name tag. They don't send me a membership card. I'm just a member. But every transaction after that, I get this discounted shipping. And same thing with Costco, right? I go get my Costco membership, and I don't walk out with a product. They do give me a card, so they're cut above. But everything after that, now I can go purchase products at Costco. Just like the apples I buy after I've got the bushel. The third kind is 3-part tariff. In this, it's very similar to the 2-part tariff, except with 3-part tariff, you get some quantity of stuff with the tariff. So in this case, hey, I'm going to get 10 apples with my bushel. The pricing's $10, so those apples I'm actually getting a little bit of a discount on. And then each apple after that, I pay linearly. So a good example of this, this is an important note. So for SaaS companies, the 3-part tariff generally produces the most revenue. There's some research around that, and I'll give you an example. But now it's like, I have a SaaS company. I never knew what a 3-part tariff was. Well, this is something that you should know, and it's mostly lingo, but there's a reason for this. Here's an example, right? HubSpot. The 3-part tariff doesn't usually show up like a membership fee or a bushel. It usually shows up as a minimum number of users. So here, this is HubSpot sales. So not their map program. HubSpot sales, right? I keep thinking the pointer's gonna work. And I've got includes 5 paid users. That's my minimum. That's my bushel. It's that's the threshold to get in. And then from there, it's usage-based price going up. And usage-based pricing, the term usage-based pricing is really popular right now because there's been a handful of strong IPOs that price using usage-based pricing. So you should know that and be able to think about that. And usage-based, it's really about, that's about your unit of sale. So if I price by number of users, that's really easy. It's really easy to tell how many users, how many seats I price by. And sometimes it's right. Sometimes it's right. But usage-based pricing, where I'm paying based on number of transactions, number of, maybe API calls, whatever my product is, usage-based pricing incentivizes use. So we get more, and so as that use goes up, you get more adoption, and there is, I think it's about a 15% uptick just in adoption with usage-based pricing. So, okay, that's nice. How do we get to willingness to pay? You've told us why it's important, but what the heck? So there are a number of ways to approach willingness to pay. We're going to talk about the Van Westendorp because we used it in the survey, so you've already seen it. There is information on these others in the ebook, and you can check that out also. So this is Madhavan over here, also Patrick Campbell. These are like OGs of pricing. These guys have been putting out great content about pricing for years and years and years. And both of them are where I got first introduced to the Van Westendorp survey. So the Van Westendorp survey, as you will remember if you took the survey, is these 4 questions. First, let me rewind. Why do we need some special kind of survey? The reason is because customers, if you ask them, they don't always know. And they're not always forthright. Sometimes they have ulterior motives. They're like, well, if I tell you a price and it's too high, then you're going to charge me that price. And sometimes they're right about that, because that's why we're asking them. And so there's some incentives for them not to report accurately. So Van Westendorp asks 4 questions. What price is way too expensive? What price is getting expensive, but you would still consider it? What price is a great deal? And what price is so cheap that you would question the value of what you were getting? Also, I really appreciate the survey responses on this. I'll show you what those came out to be using the Van Westendorp. But if you take the responses to that survey and plot them, they form a chart that looks something like this. The interesting thing about this chart is these 2 points represent kind of the lower limit and the upper limit of what the zone of willingness to pay is. And this is the zone. So this doesn't tell you, hey, it's exactly $12.14. But it does say, hey, now we have a data-driven reason to be looking at our pricing within this zone. And that helps a ton. If any of you guys have read Annie Duke's new book about how to decide, she talks about this. Or I guess her new book is about quitting. Her book before that was How to Decide. These are a couple of Van Westendorp charts from actual clients for us. And so you can see that it's not clustered around, like we have small ticket sales and larger ticket sales. The Van Westendorp works for all of them. The charts come out differently based on what each set of customers responds. So the next step is, how do you interpret these charts? And so let me walk you through a couple of examples there. I won't show you every permutation, but you'll be able to see. So we got this one. Like, well, that's not very useful. What's happening here? And it turns out that what was happening here was that we were asking a question about a monthly price, and we had some customers think, oh, what would I pay annually? And so they reported on the annual, and the annual results are out on the right-hand side, skewing the data. So once we figured that out, we said, okay, we can either take those numbers and we can either divide them by 12, or we can chop off the outliers. Sometimes that's a helpful thing to do to get at what's the true zone of willingness to pay. Here's another one. This was the first Van Westendorp survey I ever ran. And so willingness to pay looks pretty solid here between 25 and 30 bucks. Hey, it's pretty telling, right? It's pretty narrow. The interesting thing about this one was that we were charging 19 bucks. It's giving me some pretty valuable directional data. Something else that we had was, look at these. The Van Westendorp, so one of the analysis, So if you do your survey, you can take any data, drop it in 4 columns of, here's all my responses of, too cheap, great deal, getting expensive, and too expensive. You just drop those in and it'll spit this out for you. So here, we're taking a look. This was from that same company the chart I showed you the last slide. So here what we can see is that at $29, we're too expensive for 8% of the customers. At $30, there's a cliff, right? Big jump in who's willing to pay. The other side of this is we took and said, okay, remember on the pizza and salad example, the trick is finding the balance between the right number of customers and how much they're paying to be the revenue maximizing amount. In this case, at $29, what we did is we took the number of people still willing to pay, multiplied by the price, and that gave us the revenue column. So our highest revenue was also at $29. Also, and then we also took a likelihood. So sometimes you could have like one survey result that says, okay, everybody else is like 20 or 30 bucks. One result comes in, I'll pay $10,000. So we needed to check against that skewing our numbers. So we also take it and multiply it based on the percentage of survey respondents that are still in the survey at that point, and that gives us the likelihood. In this case, now we got 3 data points telling us that $29 is our revenue maximizing price. So this is your lunch data. So we took everybody's willingness to pay for lunch for the different lunches, and this is the zone of willingness to pay we got. So it looks like most people are in the like $5 to $7 for lunch range. The reason I'm showing you this is that I gathered that survey data yesterday. These tools make it super easy to analyze and be data-driven about this. It's not like, okay, we're going to mount a 6-month campaign to gather data and get we created that survey in a couple weeks ago. The first people are registering for this event. That's how quickly you can get at a data-driven look at your pricing. This is the chart from lunch. So it looks like there's a cliff there at about $7, and then there's a group that's a little. They like to pay a little bit more for lunch. Okay, next up we'll talk about some psychology. Psychology is, like the human brain, is the most complex thing in the universe. I'm going to apologize right now. In the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'm not going to be able to break that all down for you and tell you exactly how that works. But I can tell you about some things that are clustered together. So we took a look at well over 100 different psychological effects and cognitive biases. We looked at the ones that particularly affect pricing, and we clustered them in a way that we can look at them in this framework of these 4 quadrants. Okay, so let's go through these. Oh yeah, first thing is I need a shout out for Nick Kalenda. If you're not familiar with Nick Kalenda, you should go to his website and look at these things. Like, he will break down every little detail, right? The size of my pricing, which size I should put it. He's a great resource on, especially for e-commerce deals, but also for SaaS deals and other things. Great resource for little things to get incremental improvement in pricing. Before you do that, you probably want to have the broad strokes locked down. So you feel like you're pretty confident that your pricing is right. Okay, so let's start with the first one. First, we're primed to recognize the things that we either see first or recall first. So a whole bunch of psychological effects like anchoring, recency bias, all of those things are about either if we're going to see something first or recall it first. So when you think about your pricing, you think about what's the buyer's journey like? Or the buyer's journey, right? What's the buyer's journey like? What are they going to encounter first? Are they going to hit a big number first? Are they going to hit the regular price and then the sale price? All of those things will impact how they emotionally feel about the price. Under friends, I put all of the things that fall under social proof. So we're, for better or worse, human beings are herd animals. We look to others to tell what we should do, what's appropriate. And that's the same thing when we buy. So things like dropping a trusted product on our checkout page, putting testimonials on our websites, right? You guys see this all over the place. It's the same thing with pricing. If there's a way that you can bring in social proof, people's sometimes reciprocity. Free trials and free gifts are about leveraging reciprocity. because then people feel obliged to return the favor. Those things fall under friends. Reactions. Okay. So sometimes when I cover this in my classes, I'll have a table there and I'll just go bang on the table. For any of you that are sleeping, I want you now think right now, how does your body feel when you get surprised? Your heart rate, right? Your cortisol and adrenaline. Those are things, nobody controlled that. Like you didn't say, oh, I think I'm going to be surprised, right? They happen automatically. So the reason why there's a salamander up here is because these are lizard or crocodile brain features. Things like fluency. How easy was it for me to read? What am I going to infer about the simpleness and ease of use of the product because of that? Things like color and other things can impact how that feels. The research shows that we make decisions about design elements in 1/20th of a second. It doesn't come up to the higher parts of our brain. It happens deep down, in our core. So there's a list of psychological effects that you want to be playing to. You don't want people to feel the wrong way when they encounter your product or your price. The third one is references. This is a great one for Nick Kalenda, but we infer things. So if a product is high on the page, we infer that it's light, that it's not heavy. These things are things like size, weight, relative position, priming. Like maybe I had this product next to an Apple logo, and I already know that Apple stands for things that like design or a certain level of quality. That priming is going to impact how I react to the price. More detail on all of these in the ebook. Okay, the last section I'm going to talk about is price changes. So, okay, now I'm convinced that maybe we should do something different than what we've always done. Now, how do we do that? How do we do it in a way that makes it to where we don't inadvertently burn our customers? So, back to Kyle, right? Price changes can be scary, but think about this. Many SaaS companies put a 5 to 7% annual price escalator in their contracts. So if you've gone 3 years without raising your prices, you may be 20% or more behind your competition. This is, Salesforce has a 7% ratchet in their contracts. As a consumer, I do always go back and fight with them about it. 98% of the time, price changes had either a neutral or positive impact on the revenue growth of the business. This is really just about comfort, right? One of the reasons we don't change prices is because we're scared. We're going to change prices. Everybody's going to hate us. They're going to think, they're like, hey, I paid this much for that last week. Now you want more? What's going on? But the truth is that it's not usually detrimental to the business. This is a biggie. 2 out of 5 cases, right? 40% of cases, pricing changes led to a 25% or greater improvement in ARR. Well, who could use that, right? This is Naomi Ioannidis. She's also a stellar pricing resource, and she says this, right? You should be losing 20 to 30% of your deals due to pricing. Why is she saying that? It's not because she wants you to lose 20 or 30% of your deals. It's because that tells you that you're knocking on the door of willingness to pay. So, and I'm not telling you that 20 or 30% is a magic number, but the principle behind it, you should be thinking about that. Is there a certain price where we're willing to lose the customers that aren't willing to pay that? That's okay, right? Because getting max willingness to pay means sacrificing 100% of the customers, right? Look at the pizza and salad example. 100% of the customers meant we had to be satisfied with $1,600 in revenue. Okay. These are quick. Sorry that these are bullets, but 7 price change commandments. When you're getting ready to execute a price change, be direct, specific, and clear. Don't hedge, don't waffle. Like, tell customers what's going on. Related to that, don't over-communicate. So sometimes we're like, oh, I don't know, are they going to really accept this? I'm going to have to send this email that's like 10 pages long about all the reasons why that they shouldn't care about this. No, the price change sucks for them. It's okay. So what we're doing is trying to help them swallow a bitter pill that you need them to swallow, right? So we don't over-communicate. We're just direct, clear, and concise. And we're not going to use euphemisms like, I have examples from Microsoft, YouTube, and Netflix where they're like, oh, this is really a customer forward decision we made here, and now your Netflix isn't $9, it's 14. Oh, like, which one of us is the idiot, right? Which is one of us is like supposed to just swallow this and think that you're pulling the wool over our eyes? It's just be straight. Be straight with people. Be honest and authentic. Don't apologize. It's not that apology is a bad thing. Like if you have a customer service problem, apologies go miles. But in this case, you're apologizing, it sends a signal that this is a bad choice. You didn't actually need to do this choice. You're just hurting them on purpose. No, it's like, this is a business decision. We have to do this for our business to run. So we're not sorry about this because we need our business to run. We have employees. We have, there's stakeholders that we're taking care of with this decision. So you don't need to apologize. But it's kind of in our nature, right? Like we're like, oh, I know this is going to be great for you, but really what you're saying is like, hey, we need to do this. If you're willing to pay, we still are going to deliver great service. But if you're not, we know that that's a sacrifice we're making. Right? Apology is kind of like saying, it's like, well, come on, even if you're not willing to pay. Include a rationale for the change. This goes miles, right? Is there a reason? Right now, a lot of people's supply chains have been affected by COVID. Right now, a lot of people's budgets are affected by inflation. There's a ton of reasons why you might need to make a price change. And giving somebody a reason gives them an emotional hook to say, it's like, well, all right, I don't love it, but also I understand. They can empathize. Reinforce the value if you can. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but tell them why. Tell them why it's still a great deal. And then offer a way for customers to have a voice. Give them a place to talk. Give them a place to say, it's like, well, or here's my concern. Is there another way that I can address that? Not everything's about price in a transaction. Maybe there's something that we can do in another way that creates value that helps offset what's happening on the price. Okay. Then 3 tips for executing these. This is, again, adding value is not just about a conversation. Maybe you do a price change at the same time as you do a product update. So they're going to get more value, more features. They're walking home with more for the price. Maybe you give them other things like time. Maybe you give them loyalty bonuses. Whatever that matters. There's a spectrum of things that you can give them to offset the fact that the price is going up. Consider the timing, right? Timing's been been in the sort of public conversation a lot lately because of layoffs right before Christmas, right? Timing matters. Same thing with price increases. Are you delivering bad news on top of a bad economy? Are you delivering bad news, totally on its own? Like really adding value is also a timing issue. You want to add value at the same time as you're delivering bad news. And then I couldn't find a better picture for this one, so that's what I got. Grandfathering. Grandfathering can be a great tool. Here's the telltale sign about whether you should use grandfathering or not, is are you growing? Are you growing? If you're not growing, then probably you can't afford, grandfathering equates to not making a price change. Oh, everybody's the same price, but if you're growing, a lot of times grandfathering can soften the blow because your existing customer base is going to be an ever-shrinking percentage of your total customer base. So the people affected by the price increase who know that it's a change and not just, oh, that's what we always paid, get smaller and smaller over time. So I got this email this morning, and he's hitting on all of these. So I just wanted it as an example, right? So you probably saw Amanda's email 2 weeks ago. So he's not giving me a ton of time, like even if Amanda's email, but he's saying 2 weeks from now we're having a price increase. You can still get our existing prices for another 2 weeks. Okay, that's good. That's kind of a grandfathering. And then if you do, for as long as you maintain your subscription, you'll remain at the current rates. So he's saying, okay, if you buy now, you're grandfathered in. You're going to get the existing pricing. And then when prices go up and the new tiers have more features, you'll get those too. Now he's hitting on what's the value add? What is the extra things that he's giving? So this is pretty short and sweet, but he's hitting on all of the key things for price changes. Okay, last couple of points and then we'll take some time for questions. How often should you revisit your pricing? I think a great rule of thumb is when there are changes that are happening with the product or the customer. When the product changes, the value is changing. There's probably an opportunity to capture that. And I don't mean like if we release on continuous release. Like I don't mean like you're changing your prices, every second. But when you have a significant new feature set, when you've got something significant, if it's static, then inflation alone probably means you should take a look at it every 6 to 12 months. And then if there's something big happening with the customer, like the economy, like something it could be news, it could be anything that's going on inside your customer base where, hey, there's something changing there that we need to reflect in our pricing. And then that's my final point, right? Thank you, Bruce Lee, is that willingness to pay is the same example. As Bruce Lee's giving this interview, it's like be water, he's talking about like filling the cup. The cup is willingness to pay. Maximized pricing is when you fill the cup in terms of your pricing strategy. All the willingness to pay that's there, you're going to try to harvest. So, these slides will be available to you. Just shoot me an email, I'll send them to you. And here, these are links to all the resources that we talked about. Like, there's enough here, you could reconstruct this entire presentation, and certainly enough to build your pricing program. But also, if you want help, contact us. All right, so here, this is my email. That's chad@CMO Zen. No, sorry, CMO Zen. But, and then if you would like to talk to me, my calendar is just chadscalendar.com. It's the only chadscalendar.com, so you can get that. All right, questions? Yeah.
Hi, to give a nod to Bruce Lee, my app sells in China, and
Hey.
it's a completely different user, completely different pricing market. Do you have any advice, quick opinions on that, on how to sell an app that is worldwide, but having different pricing models to service that market? Like China, India, or Russia now, places where people still have an iPad, but they think about pricing very different.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And where I think I would start to give you the answer, I think there's a more complex answer that you deserve. But where I would start is it's still about understanding the customer and their willingness to pay. So that customer has different context, different economic conditions, different ability to pay, let alone willingness. And so I think where we start is understanding if the willingness to pay is, and that then telegraphs, do we need to change the way that our product's delivered? What's our user experience or something around that so that we can still capture the maximum willingness to pay? Yeah. Thank you, Marty. Yeah.
So when you're sending out a survey to get some of the pricing data, first, are you getting that from current customers, or do you have like an email list that you kind of scrap up to get that?
Yeah, great question. So I will survey both. It depends on what I have, right? If I have let's say I have a price increase coming up, like if my current customers are going to be like, why are you asking me what I want to pay? I'm happy paying what I'm paying. What's the problem? But they will oftentimes give you information about new features. Would you be willing to pay for this new feature? Would you rank order these? I gave you $100 to spend. Where would you spend it on these features? And that can influence your understanding of their willingness to pay. So prospects, I think, are the best because they're cold and they're like, if I don't ever talk to you again, it doesn't matter. I don't have anything at risk. But the other thing is like, there's not a problem over surveying. Like the people who don't want to respond are not going to respond. So I would, yeah. You want to follow up?
Follow up on that. Okay, and so when you do send out that survey, are you doing it product specific for SaaS or e-com, like your bestseller, or just a general, hey, for this broad thing we want to offer, what are you willing to pay?
Yeah, great question. So the level of specificity for me is based on what is the data that I want. So if I want data, and that usually means I want to be as specific as I can. Sometimes the reason not to be specific is that you don't have enough respondents to like the data is barely directional at best if you don't have enough responses. But otherwise I would be as specific as I could be. There's cases I've run these for like 5 different products, all at the same company, all relatively close in terms of price, but the data was much more useful.
So my question is, I have heard that sometimes when you're surveying people, asking them like a hypothetical situation of what they would be willing to pay, sometimes those results are not super reliable versus like an A/B testing on a website where they're like filtering through. Do you have any advice as far as to like accommodate for that?
Yes, so in a perfect world, I would be doing all types of surveying all the time. But that sometimes is hard. And so some of the other survey methods that I included in the ebook are things like conjoint analysis and the Gabor-Granger analysis, which are more automated, right? They present prospects with 2 pictures or 2 prices, and then they just split between them. It's a very straightforward A/B test. And so what I would say is surveys are not perfect, right? They're flawed, but man, they're way better than nothing. And really, what you're trying to do is get all of the data inputs you can get to be as smart as you can. Like ultimately, you're going to put a price out there, and the customer's going to tell you if you're right or not. But it's nice if you can be close before you take that leap. So, yeah, it's a great point. Other question? Yeah.
I'll just talk about.
Okay.
So in the presentation, there was quite a bit of sources, and some of them seemed very driven to B2C and some B2B. So my question is there a difference in some of these principles based on B2B or B2C? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, is there a difference in the pricing principles if you're B2B versus B2C? You'll notice in the pricing canvas, we have some things divided out to dial in on what the differences are in B2B and B2C. And then you have like B2B2C and DTC and other permutations. The biggest difference is psychological, and it has to do with accountability. So I think the pricing principles are applicable both, B2B, B2C. I've run these for B2B and B2C companies. But the biggest difference about how people buy in B2B is it's typically more considered, and there's accountability for the decision. Like I have to report to my boss is going to care if I made this decision right. So they tend to be more technical, more feature driven, more kind of checklist driven. Like you don't buy B2B products on the power aisle at the grocery store because they're not emotional. They're not impulse purchases. And I think so the psychology of that, I think, is the biggest difference. Otherwise, you're talking to human beings who are, like no business actually makes the purchase. It's a human being or a collection of human beings who make the purchase. So, great question. Any others? Jordan?
I have a plant question. This is something we've talked about a lot recently. The trend has been product-led growth as a go-to-market strategy. How do you consider pricing when you're looking at product-led growth strategy? Like, what are the things that you should be considering? How do you think about that differently? What are the things that go into that?
Yeah, that's great. Before I answer that, could I ask, just by a show of hands, anybody who either has a PLG strategy or is interested in PLG? Yeah, this is a great question. Thanks for planting it, Jordan. So here's some things that I consider. A PLG motion oftentimes starts versus a PLG versus a sales-led motion. A PLG motion usually starts without the support of a sales team, and that means that price-wise, you don't have as high a customer acquisition cost, which is the reason people want to do PLG, right? It's like, oh, hey, if I can do it without the extra burden of customer acquisition costs, why shouldn't I? And so I think that's really the heart of what you have to think about is your pricing. If you're pricing PLG, like if you look at PLG companies that are kind of maturing, some of the public companies and others, like they're adding back in sales-led motions, but they're doing it after they're mature. So in the early days, you don't have the margin to support sales-led if you price, specifically for PLG, and it's all about people being. I used to say this where one of the great things about the internet is that people, as they're shopping, a salesperson never talks to them. They can just come into the store, nobody's there, they can take all the time they want to look. And this is kind of like what people are talking about in terms of dark social or dark funnel marketing. And all of that is happening. And PLG relies on that to happen. People are getting all the information that they need to execute a purchase without the benefit of a salesperson. So I think with PLG, a lot of times it's product is pushing that, as not pushing PLG strategy, but you have to have a product that works with PLG. And that means that it has to be able to stand on its own. Like you don't depend on a salesperson to either drive urgency or drive education. They're getting that education in other ways. But otherwise, I think the principles apply the same.
I think one of the things we talked about with this as we brainstormed it is that leader killer filler, super important to know what your leaders are.
Yeah, for PLG.
Through the packages in the PLG.
Yeah, great. All right, good. It's 1 minute to 1. Let's take one more question, but we'll be here to talk if anybody has other questions that we weren't able to get to. And like I say, shoot me an email if you want, and we'll send you all the resources. You can dive into that yourself. Hopefully it gives you enough to yeah.
Yeah, just for time, I'll shout.
'Kay.
What's your perspective on transparency when, for example, if you didn't disclose price and you could effectively like come close to maximizing with each customer based on their willingness to pay versus transparency as a really an effective value add actually? Like, what's your thought on that?
Yeah. So complexity, I think, a lot of times makes transparency hard. And the reason is, so there may be a lot of reasons why your pricing structure is more complex, right? But what happens is with that complexity, customers get confused, and confused customers don't buy. So in terms of pricing transparency, the other thing is you have to look at what that impacts in terms of trust. I think that in B2B, it's much more common for pricing to be like call for pricing or click for a demo, that kind of thing. And I think that works. At Workfront in the early days, we ran tests on this, where whether we did our capture before or after disclosing pricing, and we really wanted it to work out better for us to disclose pricing up front, but it just didn't. So in your individual situation, I think it's important to test, and I think it's a great question to ask. But I think those are the key things. Does transparency in pricing improve trust? And if it does, like, it's all about trust in the end. And is the product too complex to be able to communicate? And that might tell you there's another problem. Maybe there's things you need to simplify. But, or maybe the right thing is, hey, a sales-led motion is what we got to do, and that part of that's because we need people to be face-to-face getting educated about it. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate you coming, and thank you.